Decades of research have shown that in laboratory settings, when people are asked to argue for a given position, they persuade themselves of that position's factual and moral superiority. This phenomenon of self-persuasion has important implications. If merely arguing for a side deepens our belief in it, then communication and debate may have limited ability to resolve disagreement. But does self-persuasion carry over to more natural settings? It's possible that outside of the highly controlled setting of a lab experiment, it is drowned out by other factors. To investigate this, the authors conducted a field experiment in a setting where individuals argue for positions that are not necessarily aligned with their private views: international debating competitions. These events feature parliamentary-style debates on topics such as freedom of movement in the EU. Once a motion is announced, competitors are randomly assigned to argue in favor of or against it, and are given 15 minutes to prepare their speeches before debate begins. Using this structure, the authors tracked self-persuasion at 4 competitions by surveying participants on their beliefs and attitudes at 3 key points: at the very beginning of the tournament, right after the 15-minute prep period but before the start of the debate, and after the debate but before scores were announced. These surveys collected 3 main outcomes. First, they elicited competitors' beliefs regarding the truthfulness of different statements. These were purposefully constructed so that, if true, they would support one side of the debate. Multiple statements were prepared for each motion, and debaters were not shown the same statement twice. Second, they were asked to assess the probability that teams arguing their same side of the motion in parallel debates would win. This measures their confidence in the strength of their debating position. Finally, debaters were asked to allocate money between a neutral charity and one aligned with one side of the motion. To incentivize truthful responses, they were informed that one of their allocations would be randomly selected to be implemented. Similarly, factual beliefs and confidence measures were incentivized by allocating monetary prizes based on the accuracy of responses to randomly chosen questions. These figures summarize the main findings by plotting the evolution of survey responses over the course of the competition. Higher values on the y-axis correspond to attitudes and beliefs that are more aligned with the proposition. Consistent with the fact that competitors are randomly assigned to proposition and opposition roles, there is no difference in factual beliefs between the 2 sides at baseline. But after debaters are assigned and have prepared their arguments, a 7 percentage point gap opens up. In line with self-persuasion, debaters become more likely to believe that a factual statement is true if it supports their side of the argument. They also display greater confidence in the relative strength of their debating position, and there is weak evidence of a gap in revealed attitudes. These estimates are about 21% of the average effect found in laboratory studies, but in this setting, they are larger than the polarization predicted by competitors' partisan political leanings. How does the debate itself affect self-persuasion? On one hand, exposure to the opposing side of the argument may reduce polarization. On the other, the act of debating itself may harden competitors' pre-existing attitudes and lead to further self-persuasion. The post-debate surveys suggest that the answer is somewhere in the middle. There is little overall evidence of either convergence or divergence in attitudes relative to the pre-debate survey. Note, this is not due to a lack of information transmission. Survey responses show that debaters did learn new arguments for both sides during the debate. Despite this, Self-persuasion persists through the 1-hour exchange of arguments and is also unaffected by a 10-fold increase in the incentives for accuracy in the belief elicitations. So, what drives self-persuasion? One possibility is that it arises as a byproduct in the process of trying to persuade others. In the pre-debate survey, debaters were asked the number of arguments they came up with during their preparation time, both for and against the motion. This figure shows that on net, proposition debaters came up with more arguments in favor of the motion, while opposition debaters came up with more arguments against it. This is consistent with a biased generation of arguments. Once an individual is asked to persuade others of a particular position, they selectively generate arguments that favor that side. Failing to internally correct for this bias can lead to self-persuasion, and this explains some of the dynamic observed here. But there is also evidence that debaters whose beliefs happen to be more aligned with their randomly assigned position received higher scores in the debate. This suggests that self-persuasion may also persist because it has instrumental benefits. An individual who is herself convinced of a particular argument can be more effective at persuading others. And so, this paper shows that self-persuasion is a robust phenomenon outside the laboratory. It's worth noting that the incentives of debating competitions are not too dissimilar from those of many settings where convincing others is of central importance. This suggests that the same dynamics of self-persuasion may apply more broadly, and potentially limit the ability of debate to resolve conflicts of opinion. To read more on this topic, you can check out the paper's references to other related work. These include research on self-persuasion, motivated reasoning, and polarization.